nature knowledge.
Greetings, this is Mara with the Trustees and the Cooperative Nature School here at the Trustees Moose Hill Farm in Sharon, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Nature Knowledge. So today I am by the meadows along the power lines because it's a really fabulous place to learn about the power and the peculiarities of pollination. The meadows on the farm are full of flowering plants. And one of the plants flowering right now is wild geranium. I don't know if you can get a good look at that. Now, in order for most flowering plants to produce seeds, which is how they make new plants, they need to be pollinated. That means the pollen from the male part of the flower, these little side bits, need to be transferred over to another wild geranium plant onto the female part, right there in the middle. Pollination is the only way most flowering plants can make seeds to make new plants. But to get the job done right, they rely on other living things to do the work of pollination. Lots of animals help with pollination. Mammals, especially bats, reptiles, birds, they're all helpful pollinators. But insects by far are the largest group of pollinators. And I would have to say moths, butterflies, and bees probably take the bronze, silver, and gold medals for best pollinators. And here on the farm, one of our most awesome and most efficient pollinators is the bumblebee, which actually is one of the main pollinators of our wild geranium. The geranium provides the bee with the nectar and pollen it needs to feed itself and the baby bumbles, and the plant makes it very easy for the bee. See how wide open the flower is, brightly colored, so the bee can easily access the pollen and the nectar. And I'm not sure if you can see these lines on the petals, but they're like arrows directing the bee exactly to where it needs to be to find the nectar and pollen. And those are the lines that we can see. The bee has extraordinary vision that enables it to see much more than we can. Now, in return for providing the bee with nectar and pollen, the plant gets pollinated. It's a win-win situation. So both the plant and the bees get what they need to ensure future plants and bees. Humans benefit from pollination too. Only when plants are pollinated do they produce food. So if you like to eat, then you need pollination. And if you like to eat fruits and vegetables like apples or broccoli, then you need bees, because bees are the primary pollinators for most of the fruits and vegetables that we enjoy. I bet most of my nature school friends have tried blueberries. Blueberries are one of my favorite fruits to eat. And right now I'm by a highbush blueberry, which just a couple of weeks ago was all abuzz with bumblebees, which is a good thing because this highbush blueberry depends on a unique talent that the bumblebee has, the ability to buzz pollinate. What is buzz pollination? Well, it's a very special way of pollinating, and only a very select group of pollinators can do it. Making pollen takes energy, so certain plants like this highbush blueberry have developed a strategy to conserve their pollen and ensure that it gets transported efficiently. Now, in the blueberry, the pollen is locked inside this tiny white flower, but our local bumblebees have the key. During buzz pollination, the bumblebee will latch onto the flower with its legs, and then it'll bite down on the anther, the part of the flower that has the pollen. And then it will use its flight muscles to vibrate furiously, which makes the anther burst open, and so the bee gets covered in pollen. Sure, buzz pollination is more work for the bumblebee, but a flower like the wild geranium has lots of other options when it comes to pollinators. But the bumblebee has almost exclusive access to the protein-rich pollen of the high bush blueberry. And the blueberry isn't the only plant that uses buzz pollination. There are tomatoes, potatoes, cranberries, peppers, pumpkins, eggplant. They all use buzz pollination. Now, most of the time, pollination is beneficial to both the plant and the pollinator, but that's not always the case. Some plants are very deceptive. Right now, I'm by the brook, a place my friends like to come and explore, and I'm right by this plant here. I'm not sure if, I'm gonna do that, if our friends recognize it. This plant is called Jack in the Pulpit. And the Jack in the Pulpit, when it comes to pollination, has a very special trick. The main pollinator for this plant is the fungus gnat. And the fungus gnat likes to lay its eggs on fungus as a food source for the little baby larvae. And this plant has developed a trick. The flower will give off a fungusy odor to attract the gnat into the flower. But once the gnat gets in, it has a very tough time getting out because of the overhanging spathe of the flower, and the long smooth sides makes it very difficult to get out. But in the process, it gets absolutely covered in pollen. Now, if this is a male flower, it will get covered in pollen, and the gnat does have an escape at the very bottom of the flower. And if the Jack in the Pulpit is lucky, the gnat will escape from the male flower and go into a female flower, where it will have the same challenges of getting out, but in the process, if the plant is fortunate, it will pollinate the female flower. But unlike with the male flower, there's no escape hole at the bottom of the female flower, so the gnat stays there forever. A fun fact about the Jack in the Pulpit: producing seeds requires a terrific amount of energy. So this plant has developed a very unique strategy to deal with that challenge. It can change between being a male or a female or neither. In one year, if it's able to store enough energy, then the following year it will be a female. If it really didn't store enough energy the previous year, then it will be a male. And if conditions are really bad, it will be neither and not produce any flower at all. So I'm going to take a closer look at this particular plant. There. Now let's see if this is male or female. I'm going to gently open up the spathe and take a peek inside. It looks like it might be a Jill in the pulpit. Okay, my friends, I hope you enjoyed learning about pollination, its power as well as its peculiarities. The farm's pollinators like the awesome bumblebee and its flowering plants like the wild geranium and high bush blueberry and Jack in the Pulpit. They are all just some of the many, many things that make Moose Hill Farm a special place. and I invite you to come and see for yourself. That's it for this episode of Nature Knowledge. Now that you have the knowledge, I encourage you to explore and let me know what you discover.